There is a pain in this world that has no quick cure. A pain that doesn't disappear with time, but only learns to live with us. It's the pain of losing someone we love deeply. And when that person is a mother, the emptiness left behind is impossible to fill. This is the story of Robert, a 42-year-old man who lost his wife Sarah after a cruel battle with cancer. But more than that, this is the story of three children: Emma, 12 years old, Lucas, 9, and little Sophie, only 6, who lost the woman who was the center of their world. And when Robert met Clara, a kind woman who entered his life like a ray of light amid the darkness, he didn't expect that encounter would test not only his heart, but also the love he had for his children. This is a story about grief, about love, about forgiveness, and about how sometimes the right person appears at the most complicated moment of our lives. Sarah Mitchell always knew that would be her last summer. The doctors had been clear. The cancer that started in her lungs had already spread, and there was nothing more they could do except keep her comfortable. She had, at most, a few months. But Sarah didn't want her last days to be spent in a cold hospital, surrounded by machines and the smell of disinfectant. She wanted to be at home, with her family, creating the last memories she could give her children. That summer, the Mitchell house in a quiet Portland suburb seemed different. The laughter still existed, but carried a weight. The hugs lasted longer. Every family dinner was treated as if it were a special celebration, because everyone knew, even Sophie, the youngest, that time was running out. Robert watched his wife with a mixture of love and absolute despair. 20 years of marriage, 20 years of partnership, of shared dreams, of nights a week with crying babies, of laughter over inside jokes that only they understood. How does someone simply continue living after losing half of themselves? Sarah spent hours talking individually with each child. With Emma, the oldest, she talked about the adolescence that was to come, about first love, about how to be strong and kind at the same time. Emma cried frequently during these conversations, holding her mother's hand as if she could stop her from leaving just by the strength of her grip. "Mom, I don't know how to do this without you," Emma whispered one afternoon while they sat on the garden swing that Sarah loved so much. Sarah stroked her daughter's hair, that same brown hair she had combed thousands of times before school. "My love, you are stronger than you imagine, and you won't be alone. You have your father, your siblings, and I will always be here." She gently touched Emma's chest, over her heart, right here, inside. With Lucas, Sarah was lighter, more playful. She knew her middle child needed normalcy, needed to feel he could still be a kid. They played video games together, even when Sarah barely held the controller. She listened to all his stories about Minecraft, about Pokemon, about school friends, pretending she had infinite energy for his adventures. "Mom's going to get better, right?" Lucas asked one night, his brown eyes full of hope. Sarah swallowed hard. She had promised herself never to lie to her children, but sometimes the truth was too cruel. "My champion, Mom is fighting with all her strength, but sometimes our bodies get very tired. The important thing is that I love you more than anything in this world, and that will never change." And with Sophie, the little 6-year-old who still believed in fairies and magic, Sarah was tender and sweet. She read stories every night, even when her voice failed. They painted together, made bead bracelets, made cookies that usually burned because Sarah forgot them in the oven. Sophie didn't fully understand what was happening. She knew Mommy was sick, but in her mind, sick people got better after taking medicine. She couldn't comprehend the finality of death. Not yet. Robert tried to be strong for everyone. He worked from home now, rejecting promotions and opportunities to spend every possible minute with Sarah. At night, after the children slept, Sarah and Robert talked for hours, reminiscing about their life together. "You need to promise me something," Sarah said one night, her voice weak but firm. "When I'm gone, you can't close yourself off. The children need you." "I know," Robert replied, tears silently streaming down his face. "And Robert, Promise me you'll live again. Not today, not tomorrow, but someday. You'll find joy again. You'll love again." "Sarah, no!" "Listen," she interrupted, holding his hand with what little strength she had. "I want you to be happy. I want the children to see that it's possible to move forward, even after a terrible loss. That doesn't mean forgetting me. It means continuing to live." Robert couldn't respond. The idea of being with someone else, of loving someone else, seemed impossible. Sarah was his world, his everything. Sarah's last day was on a Tuesday in September. Summer had ended, and with it, so had her strength. The entire family was gathered in her room. Emma held one hand, Robert the other. Lucas was at the foot of the bed, and Sophie was lying next to her mother, nestled in her arm. "I love you," she whispered, her last words. "So, so much." And then she was gone, silently, peacefully, surrounded by all the love she had created in this world. The sound that came from Robert in that moment was something primal, a pain so deep that it had no words. Emma sobbed uncontrollably. Lucas was in shock, his eyes fixed on his mother's face. And Sophie, little Sophie, kept calling, "Mommy, Mommy," not understanding why she wouldn't wake up. That was the day the Mitchell world stopped spinning. The dark months, 6 through 11. The following 6 months were the darkest of Robert's life. He functioned on autopilot, woke up, made breakfast for the kids, took them to school, worked mechanically, picked them up, made dinner, helped with homework, put them to bed. And then, alone in his room, he allowed himself to fall apart. The house felt empty without Sarah. Her books were still on the nightstand. Her perfume was still in the bathroom, but Robert couldn't bring himself to throw it away. Her clothes still occupied half the closet. It was as if he were preserving a museum in honor of the woman he loved. Emma became too serious for a 12-year-old girl. She took on responsibilities she shouldn't have, helped Sophie get dressed in the morning, checked Lucas's homework, tried to keep everything running as her mother would. But at night, Robert could hear her crying in her room, and it broke his heart into even smaller pieces. Lucas closed himself off. The talkative, energetic boy who used to fill the house with stories now stayed quiet, lost in his video games, creating digital worlds where he had control, where people didn't die. And Sophie kept asking when Mommy would come back. Even after months, she still set an extra place at the table during dinner. She still made drawings for Mommy and put them under her pillow, as if Sarah could somehow see them. The children's therapist, Dr. Martinez, said it was normal. The grieving process isn't linear, especially for children. Each one processes loss at their own pace in their own way. "And you, Robert?" she asked during one of the sessions. "How are you processing?" "I'm not," he admitted. "I don't have time to process. I need to be strong for my children." "But who's being strong for you?" The question went unanswered. Robert had friends who tried to help. His best friend, Marcus, came every week, brought pizza, watched football with him, tried to make him laugh. His sister, Patricia, offered to stay with the children whenever he needed. But Robert didn't want to go out, didn't want to do anything that didn't involve his family. He rejected invitations to dinners, to events, to anything that seemed like moving forward. How could he move forward? Sarah had been his best friend, his confidant, his partner in everything. There was no moving forward from something like that. The nights were the worst. After the children slept, the house became so quiet it was deafening. Robert would sit in the kitchen, looking at old photos on his phone. Sarah laughing on their wedding day. Sarah pregnant with that special glow. Sarah holding each of the babies for the first time. Sarah at every birthday party, every Christmas, every important moment. Sometimes he watched old videos just to hear her voice again. "Robert, turn off that camera," she laughed in a vacation video. "You're recording too much." "Never too much," he had responded from behind the camera. "I want to remember everything." Now he understood why he had recorded so much. Some part of him already knew that one day these memories would be all that remained. It was Marcus who finally intervened. 7 months after Sarah's death, he showed up at Robert's house with a proposal. "Man, you need to get out, even if it's just for an hour. The kids will stay with my wife. We'll just have coffee, talk, breathe fresh air." "Marcus, I'm not asking, Robert. I'm telling you. Sarah wouldn't want to see you like this. You're disappearing, and your kids need you to be present. Not physically present, you already do that, but mentally, emotionally present." Robert knew Marcus was right. He was just existing, not living, and his children deserved more than a ghost father. 1 hour, he finally agreed. They went to a cafe downtown, a place Robert and Sarah used to frequent in the early years of their marriage. Sitting there without her was strange, painful, but also somehow necessary. Marcus talked about work, about his family, about normal, mundane things, and for the first time in months, Robert found himself laughing at a silly joke. It was a short laugh, almost surprised, but it was there. It's allowed, you know. Laughing, feeling joy, living. She wouldn't want you to punish yourself like this. Robert nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. "I know. It's just that every time I feel a moment of happiness, I feel guilty, as if I'm betraying her memory." "You're honoring her memory by living fully. Sarah loved life. She would want that for you too." That's when Clara walked into the cafe. Clara Donovan was 38 years old and carried her own scars. Divorced 3 years ago from a marriage that had slowly disintegrated, she had moved to Portland to start over. Without children, something that was always a silent pain in her heart, she had dedicated her life to work as an art teacher at a local school. She entered the cafe that April afternoon looking for just a cappuccino and a moment of peace. What she didn't expect was to stumble, literally stumble, next to Robert's table, dropping her bag and spilling its contents all over the floor. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," she exclaimed, her face turning red as she bent down to collect her things. Robert immediately stood up to help, picking up a colored pencil case that had rolled under the chair. "No need to apologize. It's okay." Their eyes met for a brief moment. Clara's were gray-green, kind, with small wrinkles at the corners that suggested she smiled often. Robert's were blue, but carried a deep sadness that was impossible not to notice. "Thank you," she said, taking the case back. She noticed the paint marks on his hands. "Are you an artist?" Robert looked at his own hands confused and then remembered. Sophie had insisted on painting with him that morning, and he hadn't completely washed the blue paint from his fingers. "Not exactly. My 6-year-old daughter is the artist. I'm just the canvas." Clara smiled, and it was a genuine, warm smile. Those are the best works of art, the ones we make with people we love. There was something in that exchange, something small but significant, a basic human connection that Robert hadn't felt in months. It wasn't attraction, or maybe it was, but so subtle he barely recognized it. It was just nice to talk to someone new. Marcus observed the interaction with interest. "Do you two know each other?" "No, Clara gestured vaguely to her now disheveled bag. "I'm a walking disaster, apparently." "Clara," she introduced herself, extending her hand. "Robert." He shook her hand, noting how soft and gentle it was. "Join us," Marcus offered, kicking out a chair before Robert could protest. "There's always room for one more at our impromptu therapy table." Clara hesitated, but there was something about the invitation that seemed genuine. She had been so alone since the move, so focused on rebuilding her life that she had forgotten to actually live it. "If I'm not intruding." "Not at all," Marcus insisted. And so Clara joined them. The conversation flowed surprisingly easily. She talked about teaching art, about how children see the world in such a unique and unfiltered way. Robert found himself talking about Sophie and her chaotic paintings that covered the refrigerator, about Lucas and his talent for drawing video game characters, about Emma, who had recently started writing poetry. Marcus eventually excused himself, a convenient emergency that Robert suspected was fabricated, leaving Robert and Clara alone. They talked for 2 hours.
Clara didn't ask about the wedding ring Robert still wore. She didn't ask why there was so much sadness in his eyes. She just talked about books, about music, about the small things that make life interesting. When they finally said goodbye, Clara impulsively wrote her number on a napkin. If you need any art advice for your daughter, or just someone to talk to. Robert looked at the napkin for a long moment. Part of him wanted to throw it away immediately, but another part, a small but growing part, took it and carefully placed it in his wallet. That night, lying in his empty bed, Robert thought about the afternoon. For the first time in 8 months, he had felt like a person again, not just a grieving father or a widower. Clara had treated him like Robert, just Robert. But guilt came quickly after that thought. How could he allow himself to feel anything for another person? Sarah had been gone only 8 months. 8 months wasn't enough, not even close to enough. He decided he wouldn't call. That casual encounter had been nice, but it had to end there. Except 3 days later, he found Sophie crying because she couldn't make her school art project look right, and he remembered Clara saying she taught art. Before he could overthink it, he grabbed the napkin and messaged her. "Hi, Clara, it's Robert from the cafe. My daughter is having trouble with an art project. Would you have any tips?" The response came within minutes. "Of course, tell me more about the project. I can help virtually or come by if you prefer. As a teacher, I love helping with art projects." And so began something neither of them had planned. In the following months, Clara became an occasional but consistent presence in the Mitchells' lives. She started by helping Sophie with art projects. Then she began coming on Saturdays for impromptu art classes, where the 3 children created messy and wonderful art on the kitchen table. Robert watched from afar, initially hesitant, but eventually finding himself involved too. Clara had a way of making art seem pressure-free, fun, even therapeutic. She never asked about Sarah. She saw the photos throughout the house, saw the pain in everyone's eyes, and silently respected the space that Sarah's absence still occupied. But slowly, very slowly, something began to change. Robert found himself looking forward to art Saturdays. The children laughed more, the house felt a little less empty. And then, 6 months after that cafe encounter, Marcus organized a dinner. "Just some friends," he said, "nothing fancy." Clara was there, and when she smiled at Robert from across the room, something inside him moved. It wasn't betrayal, he realized. It was just life, continuing, as Sarah had asked. They talked all night, about everything and nothing, about their lives, their fears, their dreams, and when the night ended, Robert walked her to her car. "I really like you, Clara," he admitted, the words coming out before he could stop them, "and that scares me a lot." Clara looked at him with infinite understanding. "I know, and there's no rush, Robert. None. We can just be friends and see where it goes." "Thank you," he whispered. But see where it goes inevitably led to deeper feelings. Robert began to realize he thought about Clara during the day, that he looked forward to her messages, that her presence brought light to a house that had been dark for so long. And one day, 14 months after Sarah's death, Robert invited Clara to dinner, a real dinner, a date. She said yes. That's when he realized he needed to talk to his children, because they deserved to know their father was ready to try living again. What he didn't expect was the reaction he would receive.
The rejection. Robert gathered the 3 children in the living room on a Friday night. His heart was pounding. He had rehearsed this moment in his mind hundreds of times, but now that it was here, all the carefully prepared words seemed inadequate. "Kids, I need to talk to you about something important." Emma, now 13, immediately tensed. In recent months, she had noticed the subtle changes in her father, how he smiled more often, how he mentioned Clara in casual conversations, how his eyes had regained a sparkle she thought was lost forever. Lucas kept fiddling with his Nintendo Switch, but Robert could see he was paying attention. Sophie was on Robert's lap, playing with the tassels of a blanket. "You know Clara. She's been coming here on Saturdays, helping us with art projects." "She's nice," Sophie interrupted cheerfully. "She taught me how to make flowers with watercolor." "Yes, she's nice. And, well,
I've been spending more time with her. We've become close, and I wanted you to know that we're going on a date. A real date." The silence that followed was deafening. Emma was the first to speak, her voice sharp. "A date? Like boyfriend and girlfriend?" "Emma." "No!" She stood up abruptly, her eyes shining with angry tears. "You can't do this. Mom died just over a year ago. 1 year, Dad, and you're already replacing her?" "Emma, I could never replace your mother." "But that's exactly what you're doing." Her voice was rising, years of pain and anger finally exploding. "How can you? How can you just forget her like that?" "I haven't forgotten her. I'll never forget." "Then why are you doing this? Why are you bringing another woman into our lives? We don't need her. We don't want her here." Sophie started crying, frightened by her sister's yelling. Robert held her tighter, feeling his own throat tighten. Lucas finally spoke, his voice low but loaded with emotion. "Mommy's going to be sad." "What, honey?" "Up in heaven. Mommy's going to be sad if you like someone else. She'll think you don't love her anymore." Robert's heart broke. "Lucas, it doesn't work like that. I'll always love your mother, but she told me before she left that she wanted me to be happy again. She wanted all of us to be happy." "Then why aren't we happy without Clara?" Emma challenged. "We were fine. We were dealing with it. And now you're going to bring a stranger into our family." "Clara isn't a stranger. You know her. We know her as the art teacher, not as... Emma couldn't finish the sentence, sobbing. Robert stood up, trying to reach his oldest daughter, but she backed away. "I don't want to talk to you right now," she said, her voice breaking. "I can't believe you would do this to us, to Mom's memory." And then she ran to her room, slamming the door hard enough to make the pictures on the wall shake. Lucas followed her silently, his own tears streaming down his face. Sophie looked at her father with her big, confused eyes. "Daddy, is Emma mad at you?" "Yes, sweetheart, she is." "Because of Clara?" "Yes." Sophie thought for a moment, her 7-year-old mind trying to process complex emotions. "I like Clara. She's kind. But I also want Mommy back." "I want that too, Sophie. I want that too." Robert spent that night sitting in the hallway outside Emma's room, listening to her cry. He knocked on the door several times, asking to talk, but she refused. In the following days, the tension in the house was palpable. Emma barely spoke to her father. Lucas was more withdrawn than ever. Only Sophie seemed relatively normal, though even she asked confusing questions about why everyone was sad again. Robert canceled the date with Clara. She was understanding, as always. "They need time," she said over the phone. "This is normal, Robert. It's a big change for them." "I don't know if I can do this," he admitted. "I can't choose between you and my children. They come first, always." "And I wouldn't expect anything different," Rendezvous responded gently. "Your children lost their mother. Of course they're scared. Of course they feel like I'm invading her space. So what do I do? You keep loving them, and you let me help, if they'll allow it." But they wouldn't allow it. In the following weeks, whenever Clara was mentioned, Emma visibly tensed. Lucas changed the subject, and Sophie, though still friendly, seemed confused about where Clara fit in their lives. Saturday art classes stopped. Clara respectfully stepped back, giving the family space. And although Robert missed her intensely, he also knew his children needed him more. It was Dr. Martinez, the therapist, who finally helped clarify the situation. "They're afraid," she explained to Robert during a session. "Afraid of losing you too. Afraid that accepting Clara means betraying their mother's memory. Afraid that you'll love Clara more than you loved Sarah. Afraid of change in a world that has already changed drastically too much. But how do I make them understand that none of that is true?" "You can't make them understand. They need to come to that conclusion on their own. All you can do is be honest, be patient, and show them, through your actions, that the love you have for them and for their mother will never diminish." Robert knew she was right, but knowing and doing are very different things. The letter. It was Emma who found the letter. 2 months had passed since the disastrous conversation about Clara. The house had fallen into a tense but functional routine. Robert didn't mention Clara. The children didn't ask. It was as if they were all walking on eggshells, afraid to break the fragile peace. Emma was looking for a book in her father's office, a novel she knew he had and that she needed for school, when she found the box. It was a simple shoebox, hidden at the bottom of the desk's lower drawer. Inside were letters, all written in Sarah's familiar handwriting. Emma immediately recognized it. She had kept every lunch note, every birthday card her mother had written. There were letters addressed to each of them. For Emma, on your 16th birthday. For Lucas, when you graduate high school. For Sophie, on your wedding day. For Robert, when you're ready. With trembling hands, Emma picked up the letter addressed to her that said, "To be opened when you need to hear my voice again." This was it. She needed to hear her mother's voice. With tears already streaming down her face, she carefully opened the envelope. My sweet Emma, if you're reading this, then you're in a difficult moment and need guidance. I wish I could be there with you, hold your hand, dry your tears. But since I can't, I hope these words can bring some comfort. First, I want you to know that I am infinitely proud of the young woman you're becoming. Even though I can't see every moment, I know, I always knew that you would be extraordinary. You have a strength in you that is rare, my daughter, a kindness that persists even when life is cruel. I know you've probably taken on a lot of responsibility after I left. I know you, my love. You're probably taking care of Lucas and Sophie, trying to be the maternal figure they lost. And while that speaks volumes about your character, I need you to hear this. You don't need to be me. You never need to be me. You only need to be you, and that is more than enough. Now, about your father. Emma, he's a good man, the best man I've ever known, and I know he's struggling, trying to balance being both father and mother at the same time, trying to hold all of you together while his own heart is broken. If he's found someone new, and I hope he has, I want you to know something important. That doesn't mean he's forgotten me. That doesn't mean he loves us less. Love isn't a finite quantity, my dear. It expands, it grows, and the human heart has an incredible capacity to love many people in many different ways. I know it might seem strange, even wrong, to see your father with someone else. I understand, but promise me you'll try to keep your heart open. Not for me, not for him, but for yourself, because holding on to bitterness and resentment will only hurt you in the long run. If this person is kind, if she treats you with love and respect, if she makes your father smile again, then give her a chance. Not to replace me, no one could ever do that, but to be her own person in your life. And if you're angry at your father for moving forward, know that anger is valid. Your feelings are always valid. But also know that I asked him to do exactly that. I begged him not to stay trapped in the past, not to make my death the end of his life too. You deserve to see your father happy, Emma. You, Lucas, and Sophie deserve a home full of love and joy again, and that can only happen if you all allow life to continue. I will always be with you, my love, in every spring, in every sunset, in every moment of beauty you experience. I live in you, in your strength, in your kindness, in your love. Don't cry for me for too long. Live for me, love for me, and know that wherever I am, I'm smiling proudly at the incredible woman you'll become. With all my eternal love, Mom. Emma read the letter 3 times, each word penetrating deeply into her heart. She had been so certain, so absolutely convinced that she was protecting her mother's memory by rejecting Clara. But here was her mother, in her own words, saying exactly the opposite. She looked for the letter addressed to her father. For Robert, when you're ready. Hesitating for just a moment, she opened it. My love, Robert. I don't know when you'll read this. I hope it's not soon. I hope you need time to process, to heal, to remember who you are beyond being my husband. But I also hope it doesn't take too long, because life is too short to be lived in eternal mourning. I know you. You're probably feeling guilty even thinking about someone else. You're probably wondering if it's betrayal. Let me be clear, it's not. Robert, you gave me 20 years of the happiest years of my life. You gave me 3 beautiful children. You loved me through everything, on good days and impossible days. You stayed by my side when I was dying, holding my hand, making me laugh even when it hurt. You gave me a life full of love. Now it's my turn to give something to you. Permission. Permission to love again. Permission to be happy. Permission to build a new life with someone new. I don't want you to spend the rest of your life alone, Robert. I don't want our children to grow up in a house frozen in time, like a museum dedicated to my memory. I want you to live. Really live. When you meet someone new, and you will, don't compare her to me. She won't be me, and that's good. She'll be herself, with her own qualities, her own ways of loving. Let her be that. And our children, they'll resist. They'll be angry. They'll feel like you're betraying me. Be patient with them. Show them through your actions that love doesn't divide, it multiplies. I wrote letters for each of them too. When the time comes, when they're ready, share those letters with them. Let me help them understand, even from a distance. Robert, you are the love of my life. Nothing will change that. Not death, not time, not another person. What we had was real and precious and eternal. But eternal doesn't mean static. It means it continues growing, transforming, evolving. Our love will continue in our children, in the memories we created, in the lessons we shared. So go, live, love, be happy, and know that wherever I am, I'm cheering for you. Always, yours, Sarah. Emma was sobbing when she finished reading. How had she been so blind, so selfish? She had been so focused on her own pain that she hadn't stopped to think about what her mother would have actually wanted. She heard footsteps in the hallway and quickly wiped her eyes. It was her father. Emma, I heard, are you okay? Robert stopped at the door, seeing the letters scattered around his daughter. His face paled. You found Mom's letters, yes. Emma looked at her father, really looked at him for the first time in months. She saw the worry lines on his forehead, the dark eyes under his eggs, the weight he carried trying to be everything to everyone. Emma, about Clara. I read her letter to me, and her letter to you. Emma stood up, holding the letters against her chest. Dad, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for how I reacted, for how I treated you. Robert felt tears in his own eyes. Honey, you don't need to. Yes, I do, Emma interrupted, her voice breaking. I was wrong. I was so focused on my own pain, on protecting Mom's memory, that I forgot. I forgot that her mother would want us to be happy. She would want you to be happy. Robert crossed the room in 2 strides and pulled his daughter into his arms. They both cried, releasing months of tension, of pain, of misunderstanding. I miss her so much, Dad, Emma sobbed into his shoulder. I know, baby, I know. I miss her too, every single day. But she's right in the letter. We can't stay frozen. We can't stop living. Robert pulled back slightly to look at his daughter's face. Emma, I never want you to feel like you have to accept Clara for my sake. Your feelings matter. They always matter. I know, but I want to try, not because I have to, but because Mom asked me to. And because you deserve to be happy, Dad. You've been so sad for so long." The conversation with Lucas and Sophie came next. Robert sat them all down together, and Emma, holding her mother's letter like a sacred text, helped explain. Lucas was quiet for a long time after hearing what was in the letters. Finally, he looked up at his father with wet eyes. "Do you think Mom can really see us from heaven?" "I believe she can, buddy, and I believe she's proud of us, for trying, for healing. Even though it hurts, especially because it hurts, it means we loved her, and that love doesn't go away just because we let new love in too." Sophie, being 7 now, understood in her own simple way. "So Clara can be our friend, and Mommy can be in our hearts?" "Exactly, sweetheart. Exactly."
Healing. The process of healing wasn't instantaneous. It was gradual, with steps forward and steps back, good days and difficult days. Robert reached out to Clara, explaining everything that had happened. She cried when he read her Sarah's letter. "She sounds like she was an incredible woman," Clara said softly. "She was, and she would have liked you." "You think so?" "I know so, because you're kind, you're patient, and you make terrible art puns that would have made her laugh." When Clara came back for Art Saturdays, Emma was there, hesitant but trying. She watched how Clara interacted with Sophie, how gentle and natural she was, how she never tried to mother them but simply to be a caring adult presence in their lives. "My mom wrote me a letter," Emma said one day when it was just her and Clara painting in the kitchen. "She said I should give you a chance." Clara's hand paused mid-brushstroke. That must have been difficult to read. It was, but it was also freeing in a way, like she was giving me permission to move forward. "Emma, I want you to know something. I'm not here to replace your mother. No one could ever do that. I'm just me, and I care about your dad, and I care about you kids, but I'll always respect that Sarah was and is your mom." Emma nodded, a small smile forming. I think I can work with that." Lucas took longer. He was quieter, more observant. He watched Clara and Robert together, watched how his dad smiled more, laughed more, watched how Clara asked about his video games without that glazed look adults usually got, watched how she seemed genuinely interested in his Minecraft worlds. One day, he showed her something he'd never shown anyone except his mom, his secret notebook of character designs and story ideas. "These are incredible, Lucas," Clara said, genuine awe in her voice. "Have you thought about making these into a comic?" "Really? You think they're good enough?" "Good enough? Lucas, these are amazing. With your permission, I'd love to help you learn some comic techniques." That was the moment Lucas decided Clara was okay. Sophie, being the youngest, adapted the most easily. She started calling Clara Miss Clara and would run to hug her when she arrived. One day, she asked the question everyone had been dancing around. "Miss Clara, are you going to be our new mommy?" The room went silent. Robert froze. Emma and Lucas stopped what they were doing. Clara knelt down to Sophie's level. "Sophie, you already have a mommy. She's in heaven and she loves you so much. I could never be your mommy, but I can be your friend, and I can be someone who cares about you very much. Is that okay?" Sophie thought about it seriously. "Can you come to my dance recital next week?" "I would love to." "Then it's okay." The first real test came 6 months later when Robert proposed to Clara. He did it privately, just the two of them, on a walk through the park where he and Sarah used to take the kids. "I love you," he told Clara, holding the ring. "And I need you to know that loving you doesn't mean I stopped loving Sarah. It means my heart found a way to keep loving." "I know," Clara said, tears streaming down her face. "And I love you too. All of you, you and your beautiful, complicated family." But before he put the ring on her finger, they both knew they needed to talk to the children. This time, the conversation was different. Emma spoke first. "We knew this was coming," she said, trying to sound mature. "And I think Mom would be happy. Not that you're getting married exactly, but that you found someone who makes you happy." "What about you?" asked Robert gently. "Are you happy about it?"
Emma paused, really considering. I'm getting there, Dad. It's still hard sometimes. I still miss Mom so much it hurts. But Clara isn't trying to erase her. She's just adding something new. And I think I'm okay with that. Lucas nodded slowly. Clara's pretty cool, and she actually listens when I talk about games. High praise, said Robert with a slight smile. Can Clara live with us? Asked Sophie, ever practical. Because if she's going to be Daddy's wife, she should live here, right? We'll figure all of that out together, assured her Clara. The wedding was small, intimate. They held it in the backyard where Sarah had spent her last summer. Emma read a poem she'd written about loss, about love, about how families can grow and change while still honoring those who came before. Before the ceremony started, Robert took a moment alone at Sarah's grave with the kids. She's here, you know, Emma said quietly. Me too, Lucas added. Mommy's happy for you, Daddy, Sophie declared with the absolute certainty of a child. I hope so, baby. I really hope so. During the ceremony, Clara included something unexpected. She had framed one of Sarah's letters, the one that gave Robert permission to love again, and placed it on a table with Sarah's photo and flowers. This family was built on Sarah's love, Clara said in her vows, and I promise to honor that foundation, to never try to replace what was, but to help build what comes next. Sarah, thank you for loving them so well. I promise to care for them with that same fierce, unconditional love. There wasn't a dry eye in the small gathering.
Epilogue. 2 years later, Emma was 15, applying to a creative writing summer program. Her essay was about grief, about loss, about learning that love isn't finite. My mother died when I was 12, she wrote, and for a long time I thought that meant our family died too. I thought letting anyone new into our lives was a betrayal, that moving forward meant forgetting. But I learned something important. Love doesn't divide. It multiplies. My stepmother Clara isn't my mom. She'll never be my mom. But she's Clara, and that's enough. She's someone who loves my dad, who cares about us, who showed up even when we pushed her away. My mom's last gift to us wasn't just her letters. It was permission. Permission to keep living, to keep loving, to keep finding joy even in grief. And that gift, I've learned, is the greatest form of love. Lucas was 11 now, and he had just published his first comic online, a story about a boy wizard who learns that remembering the people you've lost doesn't mean staying stuck in the past. Is this about Mom? Robert asked when he read it. Kind of, Lucas admitted. It's about how the people who love us give us magic that stays with us even when they're gone. Sophie was 9 now, and she had started a tradition. Every year, on her mother's birthday, the whole family, including Clara, would make Sarah's favorite dinner, look through photo albums, and tell stories. Clara would listen, laugh at the funny ones, cry at the touching ones, and never once seem bothered that they were celebrating the memory of Robert's first love. Because she understood something crucial. She wasn't the replacement. She was the next chapter. Robert still wore his original wedding ring on a chain around his neck. He still had photos of Sarah throughout the house. He still talked to the kids about their mother, keeping her memory alive and present. But he also lived. He laughed. He loved Clara with a fullness that didn't diminish what he'd had with Sarah, but rather honored it by showing his children that the heart's capacity for love is infinite. One evening, Clara found Emma crying in her room while looking at old photos. Sometimes it just hits me, how much I miss her, how much I wish she was here. Clara sat next to her, not trying to fix it or make it better, just being present. That's love, Emma. It doesn't go away. It shouldn't go away. Do you ever feel weird about all of this? About being part of a family that still loves someone who's gone? Clara thought carefully before answering. I don't feel weird. I feel honored. Your mom loved this family so much that even after she was gone, she made sure you'd all be okay. She literally wrote instructions, Emma. That's love.
And being part of that legacy isn't weird, it's a privilege. Emma leaned her head on Clara's shoulder. Thank you for not trying to be her, for just being you. Thank you for letting me be part of your story. That night, as Robert tucked Sophie into bed, she asked a question. Daddy, do you think Mommy knows about Clara? I think she does, sweetheart. And she's okay with it? I think she's more than okay. I think she's happy that we're all happy. I'm glad, because I love both of them. Is that okay? That's more than okay, baby. That's perfect. As Robert turned off the light and closed the door, he paused in the hallway. For just a moment, he could swear he felt a familiar warmth, heard a whisper of a voice he'd know anywhere. Thank you, it seemed to say. Thank you for living. Thank you for showing them that love never dies, it just transforms. And in that moment, Robert knew with absolute certainty that Sarah was at peace, that she saw her family, whole but changed, healing but still honoring her memory, moving forward but never forgetting. Love, he realized, is the only thing stronger than death. It's the only thing that transcends time, that builds bridges between past and present, that allows us to hold on to what was while embracing what is. His children were learning that lesson too, that you can honor the past while living in the present, that you can hold space for grief and joy simultaneously, that a heart broken by loss can heal and love again without betraying what came before. Sarah's final gift, those letters, that permission, that selfless love had set them all free. Free to grieve without guilt, to love without shame, to live without feeling like they were leaving her behind. Because she wasn't behind them, she was in them. In Emma's strength, in Lucas's creativity, in Sophie's joy, in Robert's capacity to love again. And that, ultimately, is how love conquers death, not by forgetting, not by replacing, but by continuing to grow, to transform, to multiply across time and space and even the boundary between life and death. The Mitchell family had learned the hardest and most beautiful lesson life can teach, that love never ends, it just takes different forms. And sometimes, the greatest act of love is giving someone permission to keep loving after you're gone. Grief, I've learned, is really just love. It's all the love you want to give but cannot. All that unspent love gathers up in the corners of your eyes, the lump in your throat, and in that hollow part of your chest. Grief is just love with no place to go. Jamie Anderson. The end.